restart from where we were last. We talked about Hitler and how Hitler took power in Germany before we left for break. I haven't really made a video in a week since we got back. I just wanted to kind of reset. These videos are going to be a little longer, and my hope is instead of posting a video every day, you guys kind of just watch this video either through or watch like 10 minutes at a time. Okay? So what we're going to talk about today is Germany now becoming a power and how Europe's going to deal with them. Now, if you remember, after World War One with the Treaty of Versailles, Germany had to pay back what amounts to like $270 billion today in reparations, but they also had to limit their army and limit their navy so that they would not pose a threat to European nations anymore. So Hitler decides to ignore that, or says they betrayed the Treaty of Versailles, and starts to build up the army and the navy again. And he's going to threaten to move into the Rhineland. He wants the Rhineland, okay, which is borders France and Belgium has kind of it's been fought over, not just in World War One, but in wars prior to that. And eventually they're going to go down into this area. Let me get the pointer over here. It's like what Czechoslovakia and stuff. So what's going to happen is you're going to have Germany starting to spread out. European nations are going to start to worry, but Italy is actually going to make a pact with Germany. So it's the Rome-Berlin Axis Pact. Okay, so when we're talking about the two sides, we're going to talk about the Allies and the Axis powers. And the Axis powers are going to be Germany, Italy, and Japan, and it's going to be Russia for a little bit. Soviet Union, sorry. So Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler make a pact. Again, they're fascist nations. Okay, fascism is on the far right of the political spectrum. And they're going to move and they're going to take over Austria. Austria was, it's a Germanic type country. Hitler was actually from Austria. Okay, remember, a lot of these countries were Germanic in not only tradition, but just the bloodlines, because Germany and France were the two in the medieval Europe and moving on. They were the two major kingdoms, and the smaller kingdoms kind of were all like Germanic kingdoms. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm actually teaching that right now with sixth grade. Okay, so Munich Agreement, which was a worksheet you guys did last week, I think, the week before, I forget, is the agreement that's going to come between Great Britain, France also, and Hitler. And it's essentially going to tell them to, here, you can have like the Sudetenland, okay? So Chamberlain says, Neville Chamberlain, who's the British Prime Minister, says, okay, you can have that, and that's it. Hitler says, okay, I'm not going to go and take more territory. This is called appeasement. So it's to give in to the enemy to avoid conflict. No one wanted another world war. This is like 1938, 1939 right now, okay? We are 20 years removed from World War One. So I think the war to end all wars is only 20 years ago. Most of the people who fought in it are still alive. All right, they're probably in their 40s. They're good chance they're officers in the army. Every person who's alive essentially lived through it. Okay, if you're 25 or older, you probably remember it. So no one wants another world war. So this is Great Britain and the Allied nations giving it to Hitler and saying, okay, hey, we don't want a war. You can take that land. Sudetenland was like a German land, formerly German land, but just don't take any more. If you watch not the simple history, whatever video I sent you guys, blank now. Oversimplified. If you watch the Oversimplified, they explain this in a very, very funny way. Okay. All right. Don't worry about it. Do now. All right. So, war. This is where the actual fighting is going to start. Soviet Union and Germany signed a non-aggression pact, and that's essentially just they're going to agree not to attack each other. That's only going to last for like a year. Okay, year and a half, 2 years. They're opposite sides of the spectrum. So communism and fascism are two opposite sides of the spectrum. Hitler and Stalin don't like each other. Hitler just didn't want to fight a two-front war. So he says, hey, we want to attack you. You do what you want to do. We're going to do what we want to do. but they're not. I wouldn't say they're allies. All right, because Hitler again kind of backstabs Stalin and is going to invade the Soviet Union. Not long after this. Okay, so but what Hitler's going to do is Hitler's going to invade Poland on September 1st, 1939. September 1st, 1939 is the date that we consider to be the start of World War II, even though prior to that he was invading and taking over other land, but that was kind of allowed by Britain and France. Once he invades Poland, though, Great Britain and France declare war. You see somewhat of the ally system where we had in World War I, which is one of the causes. You have one nation that falls into war and they get their allies to back them. So Germany and France are going to declare war on Germany. Sorry, Britain and France are going to declare war on Germany right after Hitler invades Poland. Hitler uses it's called Blitzkrieg, which is called lightning war, and he just rushes through Poland. And Poland really couldn't put up much of a fight. Poland is going to be occupied for the entirety of the war, and they have a very, very high Jewish population. So we're going to talk about what happens with the Holocaust and how a lot of the concentration camps are actually in Poland, not in Germany. And there's a reason for that, but we're going to get to that. Okay, so you're going to have the Allied powers versus the Axis powers. You can kind of pause and look here at the three sides. It wasn't just Germany, Italy, and Japan. There were other smaller nations that backed them. But the main ones are Germany, Italy, Japan versus France and Great Britain. I have those underlined. Again, you have China, Mexico, Canada, Belgium, India, and Poland. Some of these are just like Canada and India are British colonies, British provinces, commonwealths. So they're obviously going to fight on the side of Great Britain. Poland's taken over 5 days into the war, so they really can't help too much. China is going to be taken over by Japan pretty early on, even though they do put up a fight. Belgium's going to be invaded by Hitler. Next slide, I think it is. So again, they don't really have much to do. They do send troops. They're going to help. But it's actually going to be the United States and Soviet Union. They're going to align with particularly Great Britain to fight against Hitler. Okay? So you need to know Blitzkrieg. Highlight Blitzkrieg. Whatever you guys are doing, pause, write down. It's lightning war. Okay, this is something you're going to need to know now. This is something you're going to need to know in the future. And this is what Hitler's going to use to kind of take over all of mainland Europe almost immediately within a year. Okay? And he's not able to use it against Great Britain because Great Britain is an island. Okay? So Germany conquers Poland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Denmark, and Norway in very quick succession. There's not really much fighting that's put up by them. They're just not prepared for it. What they're going to do next is they're going to go and conquer France in 1940. And by the way, Lebensraum is German for living space for the German/Aryan race. Again, the Aryan race is the tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, which Hitler believes that everyone should be. So they try to eliminate everyone that's not of that. Okay, because that's a superior race. Again, he's short, black hair, not blue eyes. So it's very contradictory. It's kind of like everyone knows that though. So again, France is going to be conquering in 1940. Most of Britain's army is actually in France, and what they did was they kind of lined up where they thought that Hitler was going to attack, and then Hitler just pushed right through Belgium, which is what Germany did in World War One, and that was a Schlieffen plan. The Schlieffen plan didn't work because they weren't able to get to Paris. Here, though, Hitler is able to go right through Belgium, attack France, and they were able to push. Let me just go to the next slide. They were able to push the British and French armies to the coast. Okay, so one of the worksheets that you guys did was Dunkirk, and let me just see if I have any Dunkirk. No. Okay, so with Dunkirk, you had all the troops are pushed by Hitler up to the coast to the English Channel. Okay, and what he's going to do is he stops. So he stops once he's got them surrounded. There's big debate on why he stopped. His generals are telling him not to stop. He decided to stop. I think he just kind of assumed that he had these troops trapped, which was it was about 340,000 British soldiers. So it was almost the entirety of the British army at that point. And there were French soldiers. Some of the French soldiers were rescued, but a lot of them were left behind. And what happens is Churchill, okay, uh, an entire Royal Navy and a large amount of citizens who just had like fishing boats and small boats crossed the channel, got all these troops, which you can see kind of down here lining up on the beaches, and shuffled them back across to Great Britain. And by the time it was moving and happening, Germany was just kind of sitting. And when they realized they tried to push in, but it was too late. They did capture British troops. They did capture a lot of French troops. When you have 340,000 soldiers who evacuate, the war can continue. This is Hitler's first kind of like gaffe from a military standpoint. And we talk about he obviously he's an evil guy. His only positive, well, something he was good at, I guess you could say, was motivating people to follow him. And he was a really good speaker. But after that, he was not a good military leader. He really had to listen to his generals. A lot of times he just didn't listen to them. He makes these mistakes that kind of cost him the war. And this is the first one we're going to talk about. If he didn't stop outside of Dunkirk and he just pushed and kind of surrounded the troops and pushed them kind of into the into the water, essentially, the war in a large part probably would have been over right there. But because the British troops were able to escape to Great Britain, they were able to kind of reconsolidate. You guys do a workshop on this, so make sure to read it. Dunkirk is a really good movie. If you're able to watch it, I can't remember if it's R or if it's PG-13. If it's R, wait until you're old enough. Okay, you guys got this speech because I sent it to you in the homework. Okay, so I'm not going to play it here. All right, so fighting continues between Great Britain and Germany, but it's primarily in the air. Okay, so you're going to have the German Luftwaffe, which is their air force, bombing British cities every night. Okay, the RAF, which is the Royal Air Force, kind of holds them back for the most part, to the point where Germany is going to kind of stop focusing on bombing the cities of Great Britain because it's just not doing anything. He's eventually going to put his focus on the east, and he's going to go attack Stalin in Soviet Union. He doesn't stop bombing Great Britain, but he realizes the only way to take over Great Britain is to actually go on the island and conquer it, and he just doesn't have the troops to do that. They have a huge army, but to go take this fortified island, it's not going to happen. The only people who have tried it, Caesar tried it. Caesar crossed the channel, goes into Great Britain, conquers, like, he couldn't even conquer all of Great Britain. Okay, and now here in 1940, Hitler he doesn't have enough troops, so he's going to take his focus just on mainland Europe for the time being, and then he'll go back to Great Britain. And that's kind of a mistake. He shouldn't have ever done this, because what he does is he now opens up a two-front war again. He has to keep his focus on Great Britain just in case Great Britain decides they want to reinvade mainland Europe. But now he's fighting a war on the Eastern Front. It's the same mistake that happened in World War One. All right, and he kind of makes it. So what that is, with the attacking the Eastern Front, which is the Soviet Union, Russia, it's called Operation Barbarossa. So in 1941, Hitler decides, okay, I'm going to go take the Soviet Union. He's trying to conquer the world. You have to remember that. It's not, he doesn't want to just conquer Europe. He's trying to conquer the world. So he's going to break that non-aggression pact with Stalin, and he's going to invade. And you're going to see here, there's 3 points that he's going to go for. He's going to go for Stalingrad, which is the namesake of Stalin. He's going to go for Leningrad, which is the namesake of Vladimir Lenin. And he's going to go for the capital, Moscow. Look, though, how far deep into the country these 3 cities are. All right? This is the same mistake Napoleon made when he tried to go and conquer Russia in the 1800s, was that he goes through, and he left in like the spring, so by the time he gets close to Moscow, it's the winter, and Russian winters are brutal, and if your troops aren't prepared for them, like the Soviet Union troops were prepared for them, you're going to be in trouble. And that's what's going to happen with Hitler and the German army. Millions are going to starve, millions are going to freeze to death, and they're going to kind of be stuck where they were. So you're going to have troops in Stalingrad. Stalingrad is going to be surrounded by the Germans for years. The Russians in there, are kind of just holding out. Stalin doesn't want to give up that city because, again, it's named after him. They never really make it to Moscow. And a big reason for that is something the Russians do, the Soviets do, that the Russians did against Napoleon was the scorched earth policy. Okay, so if you look here, scorched earth policy. We've talked about this before. I can't remember which chapter I taught about this with you. You could say a civil war with Sherman, even though Sherman was burning down the South. He was doing so that the South couldn't use the resources. So what the Russians are doing here is they're burning all the farms, they're killing all the animals. So as they're retreating, the Germans, who assumed that they'd be able to use the resources or the food and the farm animals from the land that they conquer, they get there and the farms are burned down and all the animals are dead and they can't use them. So now your supply line you can't even see Germany right now. Germany is over here. Your supply line from Germany to where these troops are is going to be so long and thin that, especially when the winter comes and the snow falls, it's going to be near impossible to get them the supplies they need. And you're going to say, oh, well, can't they just fly it in and drop it? Yeah, but again, if it's cloudy, you can't do that. And a lot of times in Russia in the winter, it's just cloudy and the weather's crappy all day. Okay, so it's going to be very difficult. So I underline here and I call it a turning point. It's a turning point in the sense that Germany is not going to push any farther in Europe from this point. They've conquered mainland Europe. They're allied with Italy. They try to push into Russia, and this is the extent of where they get. They don't go any farther than this. From here on out, for the rest of the war, they're just slowly being pushed back to Germany. Okay, from this end, and eventually from the west when the United States enters the war with Great Britain. Okay? There is fighting in Africa that we're going to talk about. It's between the British and the Americans against the Germans. We're going to talk about that later on. But first, I'm going to talk about the United States entry into the war. And then we're going to stop there for now. So let me just see. Okay. All right. So the United States, again, you have to remember they are going through the Great Depression still in the 1930s. We were in World War I. We had 100,000 something men who died in World War I. We want nothing to do with another European conflict. Okay, so the people of America, American citizens were against a war. They wanted to focus on themselves and kind of rebuilding the economy. FDR says, okay, yeah, I'm going to stay neutral. Behind the scenes, though, he's working with Great Britain, so we're going to talk about that. And he knows that we're going to eventually be pulled into the war. And I think deep down people did know that, but they just want to, again, people were focusing on America, which is the right thing to do at that point. America is still in the Great Depression. Now, World War II actually brings us out of the Great Depression, but no one's going to be pushing for another world war when our economy is in the tank. No one's going to push for a world war regardless. So the United States is going to prepare anyway for us being pulled into the war. So they're going to build up the Navy, they're going to build up the Army. The Neutrality Act of 1939, which is also called the Cash and Carry Act, is nations who want to buy goods from us, okay, they have to come to the United States, pay us in cash, take the goods, and then bring them back across the Atlantic Ocean, okay, on their own ships. America's not going to send goods with them. And that's good and bad. It's good because it's making us money. It's bad because we're eventually going to annoy someone, and that person is going to be Germany. And same as what happened in World War I with submarine warfare, we're going to see that again. We're going to see ships that are crossing the Atlantic, okay, trading goods with Great Britain and other nations. They're going to get sunk by the German U-boats. Okay. The second thing FDR is going to do is he's going to set up the Selective Service and Training Act, okay, which is a peacetime draft of men. Now, when you turn 18, it's not 21, it's 18 now. When you turn 18, you're going to get a letter in the mail, which is the Selective Service Act, and something you need to sign, and send back. A lot of times when you go get your license when you're 18, it just automatically does it. So technically, because I fall in the age range, if there was a war and they wanted to do a peacetime draft of men, I could be drafted. There are ways to be exempt, like medical reasons you'd be exempt. If you're the sole provider of your family, you could be exempt. So, but that still is a thing today. It's just adjusted a little. So he's gonna build up the Navy, build up the Army for the what he says is the eventual possibility, eventual reality of the United States being pushed into the war, whereas others think that it's just a possibility. Okay, so I'll do this and this, and then we'll talk about Pearl Harbor. I'll wait to talk about Pearl Harbor because now it's like 20-minute video. So FDR, he's going to break Washington's precedent of being a two-term president. He's going to win a third time in 1940. The reason he's able to do that is there is no law at this point. There's an amendment now that disallows you from running for a third term. Back then, though, that it was just kind of like an unwritten rule that you can't run for a third term, or you shouldn't run for a third term. Now, Theodore Roosevelt ran for a third time, but he did so after leaving the presidency for 4 years. And his argument was that he didn't actually complete a first term because he came in after McKinley was assassinated. Technically, that is true. If you don't complete a full term, you are allowed to go and try to do another term, but it's a bad optic. It's a bad look. Now, the reason FDR was able to do it was because it was, one, still the Great Depression. Two, there was a world war raging around the world, and the fear was that if you try to switch leaders now, it's not going to be good. Okay? FDR kind of had the stance of neutrality. People like that, so they voted for him. Also, people just loved FDR because of all the programs he put in place at the time. Okay? He starts to prepare America for the mindset for a possible war. Again, he wants to fight fascism. He doesn't say he wants to fight communism because, again, we actually ally ourselves with the Soviet Union. But essentially, we want to fight communism as well, even though by the end of the war, in a way, we're aiding communism by giving the Soviet Union land. But that's a discussion for another day. Okay? He's going to implement the Lend-Lease Act, which is similar to the Cash and Carry Act, but it's lending supplies. He actually lends a bunch of old warships to Great Britain to help them, and he lends it to allied nations. So now it's not warring nations, it's allied nations. He's helping Great Britain. He's helping France, but France is occupied right now, so we can't really help them too much. Particularly, he's helping Great Britain. Okay? From the Cash and Carry Act, from the building up of the Navy, from the building up the Army and the supplies that are needed for an army, the U.S. economy starts to get back on track. Okay? Because you're making more products. A lot of these are war products, but regardless, these factories are now operating, so you have more people working. Okay? And it's good. That's what takes us out of the Great Depression. It's not his New Deal programs, because again, his New Deal programs cost the government money. So as good as the government programs were, because they brought money to the American citizen through getting them jobs, those jobs that are build bridges, those bridges cost money, the government has to pay for that. So now we're making money because we're selling goods to other nations. Now, the Atlantic Charter, which was August 14th, 1941, it's between Churchill and FDR. It was done in secret. They met on a boat off of Newfoundland, which is Canada, and they agree on peace goals, and that Hitler must be defeated. Keep in mind, though, the United States has not entered the war. So this precedes Pearl Harbor. And it's important to note that FDR at this point knew that the United States was going to enter the war. We're going to get into it, but if you're like I know some of you guys are like tinfoil hat theory people. There are theories behind if FDR knew about Pearl Harbor. We're not going to talk about them too much because I don't necessarily believe them. But if you want to look into it, it's pretty interesting stories. I made like a video to it just to kind of give you an idea. But we're approaching 25 minutes for this video. What we're going to talk about in the next video is Pearl Harbor, which is the worksheet that you guys did last night. If you guys want to watch this video one time, or if you want to break it up into 2 days, either way works for me. Okay? All right. Talk to you later.